Well, one of the venues I used to love fishing as a kid was the mighty River Trent. It's not a venue that I get much opportunity to get along and fish, but this year I have set some time aside, certainly through the summer months, to get onto this wonderful river where I can just kind of go through some different feeder fishing river techniques. One of the questions that I get asked quite often is missed bites and how to tackle that problem on this sort of a river. We all love catching bream, barbel and even carp, what inhabit a lot of these stretches now, but small fish can be very, very important, certainly if you're fishing team events, and certainly when the river's fishing hard like it can do at certain times of year. Those small fish can be very, very important. I've brought you along here today to the A1 Pits stretch of the river, which is about 40 miles from where I live. It's just where the A1 crosses the Trent. And I brought you here today just to kind of show you some of the bits of kit and some of the approaches that I use to tackle small fish on this type of river. I'll talk you through the kit, I'll talk you through the bait, and I'll talk you through the approach, and hopefully we're going to catch some fish for you. Well, as you can probably see, it's bright sunshine. It's not the most ideal conditions. It's very, very clear as well, the water clarity, very clear in fact. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to go on today as regards what we're going to be catching and how many bites we're going to be getting. What I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to try a new rig out. It's a rig that I've not used before, so you're kind of going to be seeing this for the first time just like I am. I'm sure it's a rig that other people have used. You know, I invented this rig. It's one that I've just kind of, it's a concoction of one or two different rigs, so I just want to try it out, and this is the perfect sort of session to do that. It's a combination of a free running rig, but I know that when people talk about they've been missing bites on this sort of a venue, it's mainly revolving around small fish, generally roach, but certainly on the Trent it can be dace. They can be very, very difficult to hook, and there are several factors that can be the reason for those missed bites. I'm going to highlight some of them. Some of them might still remain a mystery to you, but I can just at least show you and tell you the kind of things that, you know, I've changed and tried that have enabled me to catch more of these fish. And no doubt I'm going to have to make some of these tweaks through today's session, because like I said, not every day is the same. So things like that we'll only find out once we actually get fishing. Now, whilst the way that you feed can differ from day to day, and that's, like I said, that's only something we can work out whilst we're actually fishing. Sometimes the fish want ground bait, sometimes they don't. When it's clear like it is today, they might not want any ground bait whatsoever. So those sorts of things do fluctuate from session to session. However, the kit side of things tends to be the same. I'm going to be using a 13-foot rod today. It's the XD 4 metre. And tip choice can be very important as well when you're targeting these small fish. Obviously we're fishing a river, and that's when you tend to use tips that are a little bit stronger than what we would normally use on a still water. However, there isn't that much flow here today. One of the first things I did when I got here was I clipped a bomb on and cast it out just to see what the flow was like. Some days on here you might have a 3-ounce tip on, you might have a 4-ounce tip on, and that's why we basically carry so many different tips. I already had a 2.5-ounce tip already set up in that rod, and as it turns out that is just about spot on. What I've found with small fish on here, the softer the tip that you can get away with, the better. Alright, so, and I didn't know what that was going to be today. Obviously this rod was set up at home, but I only knew when I got here if that tip was going to be right. So, you know, try not to overlook that. I know we love setting rods up at home, and it's great to get to the bank with that rod already set up and ready to go, but if that tip isn't right, I know it's going to take you a little bit more time to set up. You're going to have to strip it off and put the right one on. Trust me, it will pay off in the long run in the overall side of things. So make sure your tip's right. Like I say, I mean, we carry a selection for a reason, and that's why, but 2.5-ounce tip is the one that we're going to be using today. Well, once again I'm fishing a little bit of an unknown. I mean, obviously I know the river, but all the anglers that are fishing here today, they've all got bivvies up and bite alarms out and all sorts. So it's obviously a hot spot for big fish. So I don't really know what the head of small fish is like in the river on this stretch at this time of year. so it is a little bit of an unknown. I've mixed some ground bait up. I've mixed Ringer's Dark. I've gone down the route of Ringer's Dark, which is a nice strong mix. I think it's an ideal mix for these conditions. I want something with fish meal in case there are bream and skimmers out there, obviously, or hybrids. And it is a dark mix as well. Like I said, the water clarity is very, very clear today. And obviously with that being a dark green mix, in my opinion, I think that's perfect for water clarity when it's like this. So I'm going to kick off with that. I'm going to keep packing some casters through. Casters are a fantastic bait for small fish on here, and I'm just going to kick off with that just to see kind of what reaction we get. I've got plenty of casters with me. I've got 2 pints of casters. I've also got some live maggots as well. And if that doesn't work, you know, if it doesn't look like there are, you know, they're coming to the ground bait or there aren't fish there in numbers, then I will go down a block-ended feeder approach as well, because you know that can be very, very good when the water clarity is clear like this. A block-ended feeder with no ground bait whatsoever can be the best way to go, but obviously I will switch to that in due course during the session. The first thing I really want to do when I got here is once I'd set up, I got a bomb out into the water. I wanted to have some sort of an idea of what the contours of the peg were like. I just felt my way out with a stopwatch and just kind of got a feel for how deep it was and where any deeper areas were. One of the questions I get asked a lot about fishing on rivers like this is how you choose or how you decide on which line to fish. And there are lots of different ways of approaching that. You know, some people will always go down the route of looking for the deepest water. Some people will always look for the flow, where the fastest parts of the river are. Other people look for the route that the boats take, all right, because that would maybe imply that that's the deepest area and where the most flow is. There are different theories on this, and I've tried lots of different ways of coming up with one answer, and you know, there isn't one answer in my opinion. You know, it's just kind of, you know, there might be areas of the peg that are really, really slow moving. There might be areas that are running fast, and if you have to fish that live in that oxygenated water where it's faster, then that might be the area for you to target. Likewise, if you were targeting bream, for example, and there was a little bit of extra water in the river, then you might want to tackle those slacker, slower areas, you know. So there's no one answer to it. I've got an option here really where the flow is kind of from about halfway and further across. So this inside is a little bit slower, and the deepest point is around halfway as well, which is 3.5 seconds, a 3.5 seconds count with a 1 ounce bomb. So that is the area I'm going to tackle. So all I did was I just found the spot that I felt was the deepest area, where there was some nice flow. I've clipped up the reel, and then I've gone to the sticks and clipped up, just so I know exactly whatever it is that I've clipped up at, and it worked out at exactly 33 meters. All right, so I just know if I've got to take that clip off for any reason, I can go straight back to the sticks and clip up at exactly that same range. So I'm going to kick off there with ground bait and caster, maggots on the hook, and just see what reaction we get. If we've got to change through the session, then that's fine. And you know, hopefully there's going to be some fish out there waiting for us. I've seen a few fish topping. There are so many fry down the edge, it's incredible. It's a fantastic sign for the river. I don't know what they are, they're a little bit too small for me to tell what species they are, but yeah, it's fantastic to see so many, you know, small fish down these margins. But I'm going to get out there now, see if there's some fish there, and like I say, I expect to make some tweaks at some stage during the session. Well, the setup I'm using today is, I'm using the feeder 5500 reel, and you probably spotted it already, I'm using Braid. The reason I'm using Braid today is because I just want to try it out. This is 0.10 submerged braid, and if you normally fish on rivers like this with monos, the diameter of those that you're using, I don't know what you're using, £6 line, £8 line, whatever it might be, you're probably looking at the diameter of that being 0.20, 0.22, might even be more than that depending on which line it is, 0.24, 26, whatever. With a mono like that, that mono's diameter is actually double what this diameter is. So that's why I want to use this today. I just want to see what it's like, you know. That in theory should let me allow me to use a feeder that is much lighter than I would do if I was using mono, because obviously the mono, with it being a thicker diameter, would be picking up more of the toe, therefore I need more weight on. So that's what I'm trying today, and I'm also using it just to see what the pickup is like actually on the bites and reading bites and that sort of thing, because obviously with braid like that there's no stretch in it in comparison to mono where there is stretch. So I'm just doing it to try it and see what happens. Okay, I've got an 8 pound shot leader on there, which is it's about 6 meters in length. And the rig that I'm trying out today is basically, the first part of the rig was I threaded on a feeder stop. This is obviously one of the matrix ones that just slides on to the leader like that, so that's the first part of the rig that goes on. I've then slid on a feeder link, again a matrix feeder link. I've been using these for a while now. They're nice and strong, and obviously at the bottom of that is the snap link swivel, and that goes straight to the feeder. Okay, really nice and simple. Below that I've then got two number 6 stots. All right, well, I think these are the actual easy shots that we used to do, but that's 2 number 4s there. Okay, if I had to step the weight of that feeder up, for example, sometimes on rivers you might have 2, 3, 4, 5 ounce even, you might want to double that to 2 number 4s, but I'm just using 6s today just to see. I think that's plenty strong enough. As you can see from the big 6.0 on there, I think I'm only just about needing a 60 gram feeder to hold bottom today, so those should be easily strong enough to withstand that on the cast. Okay, below that I've got one big loop that I've tied. As you can see, it just goes to the base of the feeder. All right, that's just to help stop tangles, and then I've just tied 2 knots in that one big loop to create 3 smaller loops. So it's not a twizzle boom, it's just a series of loops. And as you can see, the length of that, the bottom of the loop finishes right bang at the bottom of the feeder, and then I'm just going to attach my hook length loop to that loop. It's a really nice simple rig. I want to try it. It's not one that I've used before, and I just want to see how it performs as regards. I don't think I'll get any tangles with it, and I just want to see what above else the bite registration is like as well. The reason for that, in case anyone's wondering, is so that I can shorten that right down and limit how much movement I actually want within the rig from fish that are biting. I could lock it right up if I wish, or I could slide it, you know, to create more of a bolt rig, or I can slide it up so it's completely free running with no stop there. It's just a trial and error thing, and it's something that you can only kind of work out on the day. All that is coupled with, I've got the XD. I'm using the XD class 4 meter, which is a 13-foot one, 100 gram version. I know a lot of people ask about the version, and that should be ideal with this 60 gram feeder, and currently I've got a 2.5 ounce tip in that, and I think it's a really nice balanced setup on, you know, the way that this is all put together. So hopefully it's going to work effectively. So to kick off this session, I'm just going to put some feed in before I put the hook length on, just to put a little bit of a bed of bait down. All I'm going to do is I'm going to be feeding casters, scoop them into the feeder like that, and then I'm just going to, like I say, I'm just going to put 2 or 3 of these in. As you can see, it's just caster in there. I'm just going to cap it with the Ringer's Dark ground bait, not too much because I'm going to empty them straight out. There we go. You see how they're sandwiched in there. I'm just going to put about 3 in, I think, just on that 33 metre line, just to get a bit of a bed down. Just going to give it a few seconds to empty, just to make sure it's going to empty on the bottom. Don't want it up in the air and spread all over the place and downstream. Yeah, I felt that empty really nice then, straight away. Good thing about braid when you're feeding like this, it's because there's no stretch in it. When you go to jerk the feeder, there's no stretch there, so it's a much sharper, cleaner, kind of empty. Same again. I'm going to try not to pull this down the same hole. I'll spread it a little bit. Obviously the flow is going to spread some of this out as well, but it's just a trial and error thing. I've no idea what we might catch. I know they catch a lot of fish here at night. So that's it. I'll get the hook length on now and see if we can catch some fish. really clear that there aren't any better fish feeding at the moment. Just had a quick walk down to the left and there's some lads down there. Nobody's caught any bonus fish at all. It's all roach and dace and that sort of thing. And I'd heard that a lot of the fish here do feed at night, especially when it's bright sunshine like this. So what I'm going to do is, because I want to know if this rig is going to work, if it's right for this sort of fishing, I've just scaled the feeder down now. Scaled it down to a 40-gram feeder. It's smaller in size as well, so it's not going to carry as much bait. And I'm going to fish for bites now. I've shortened that hook length up now till about 30 centimetres. And all I'm going to do is fish single caster now. I just want some bites. I can't obviously tell what this rig's like or how it's working if I'm not getting bites. So all I'm going to do, I've just scaled down now. I'm just going to put a few casters through, capped off with that Ringer's dark ground bait, and just see if I can get some bites and just kind of get a feel for how this rig is actually working. There we go, straight away with that short hook length. That was a lovely bite, that, you know, it really quick. Hooked it first time. I mean, it's the dace that are the hardest to hook, and you know, a decent stamp as well. Beautiful. Just hooked in the side of its mouth. I mean, they're the ones that can be really, really difficult to hook. Quite a nice stamp as well. If you could keep them coming, you'd soon put a net together. Well, it's clear to see that that ground bait approach isn't really working. I'm getting a few bites, but certainly not from any sort of substantial fish. All the bites are little tiny knocks, flickers, and everything is suggesting small fish, either they're roach or dace. The only fish I've caught are dace, and when that's the case, you know, I mean, the big fish just might not be there. They might not be fishing, or the stamp fish. I want to find out if this rig's working properly. Like I say, I've not used this rig before, and the only way I can find out how effective it is or how I can make it work is if I'm getting plenty of bites. And I think there are lots more, you know, small fish out there than what I'm actually getting a reaction from on this setup. So I'm going to switch to a block end feeder. I'm going to cut the ground bait out altogether, and then I'm just going to feed some maggots and some casters, only a few. I'm going to open the holes out on the feeder, just so that those casters can come out nice and quickly, because I think a lot of the bites we'll get, if we can start building up a swim with that loose feed, I think a lot of the bites will come quickly as well. So obviously, you know, if I'm hooking fish straight away or striking straight away, as soon as the feeder goes in, I want that feeder to be emptying as quick as possible whilst it's still out there where I've actually hit my clip, you know, just to try and keep the feed in one area. So I'm going to switch to a block end, and let's see if we can start building up a net of small fish. Well, I can't believe what a difference that's made. Obviously cutting out the ground bait could be a factor of that as well. And sometimes, you know, you're making lots of little changes like this. Sometimes I don't honestly think it's the one, key change that you've made. Sometimes it's a combination. So now, I mean, that rig is working perfectly now. It's you know, it's one of them things that you can only work out on the day. Simple as that. I mean, often when the water clarity, like I said at the beginning, is clear like this, a block end feeder can be best because they just don't want that ground bait, and it looks like that's what's happened today. I still caught quite a few fish with the ground bait, the open-ended feeder and caster. I caught some fish doing that, but I just felt as though there were more fish to be had with a better approach by catching more of those small fish, and that's exactly what's happened with this feeder. And this rig, the rigs work perfectly. It's been great. It looks a little bit more kind of, it's got a bit more metal work on it, if you want to use that term, than you know what I have been using over the last few months. But I haven't had a single tandle with it, and once I've switched, I've tightened the tip over. That'll definitely be the way to go today. Just tighten, basically let the flow tighten the rig up, and that's worked really well because that's helped hook the fish for me as well. So just on reflection to that, because that is the case, I honestly believe that mono would have been better on the reel than braid, purely because mono with a thicker diameter, whatever that might have been, 0.20, 0.22, whatever it might have been, that would have picked up more of the flow. It would have had put more of a bend in the tip, and that would have locked the rig up a lot more. So whilst I'm quite happy that this has worked all right, the braid, I think it would have been a much better rig and much more efficient. I would have hit more bites with mono, but we'll obviously never know that. But I know for next time that if I'm going to fish like this, I will select mono in future, because I just think the rig works better when there isn't as much flow on it, like today. So yeah, it's been cracking. Really enjoyed it.
Put all them casters in, 3 maggots on, and just left it. I had to have one last cast before I packed up a bream. Maybe they have been there all day, I don't know, but 3 maggots on. Put 3 maggots on a 12. I put 2 pints of casters in. Maybe they've been there all day, I don't know. Beautiful condition. I wonder how many more of them might have been out there all day.
Well, that's been a fantastic session. I've had loads of bites, managed to change a few things and turn them into fish, which was brilliant. You know, like I said right at the start, you know, there isn't one answer to all these things. When you're missing bites on rivers like this, it could be any one of lots of things. It could be the size of your hook bait, the way that you're feeding, the weight of your feeder, your tip, just the way that you're setting your rig in with the loop and all that sort of business, even the way that you're hitting bites as well. And sometimes you've got to lock your tip up to the fish, sometimes you've got to leave a bit of a bow, and you know, once you know what all those options are, that's when you can only come to the bank then try and figure out, often through the process of elimination, which one is best on the day. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of an insight into this sort of fishing. Like I say, I have got more visits scheduled to this river, and I'm going to be fishing for different species with different rigs and that sort of thing. So if that's something you might be interested in, then please just hit that subscribe button there. If you want to see more in-depth videos and more behind the scenes type videos, then you might want to check out my other channel, which is just there, Patron TV, and that gives you even more videos each month. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed today. The weather's been stunning again. It's been a little bit windy, but we've had plenty of fish. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.